So let's take a journey how I learned firsthand how I found power in adversity. Look adversity in the face and find the power to learn, grow, and find victory in time. What is adversity? The Cambridge University describes it as a difficult situation, misfortune, or calamity. Many have heard it said like this: perfect storm, we're in it neck deep, it's all going south, and last but not least, my favorite, I'm going to make this as PG as I can, the crap done hit the fan. Everyone has adversity, and it comes in many, many forms. There's physical, mental, emotional, financial, social, and spiritual. Many are very hard to talk about, but I have learned that when you do acknowledge them and begin to speak out about them, you make steps towards finding your own power. As we go through my adversities, I hope that you guys will look back on your own and see things that you actually did much better than what you thought. The lessons that you learned, and maybe an opportunity where you could have done better. You've heard it said that I'm from a small town, and yes, Marshville is about 2 hours east of here, and we call it Marsh Vegas. Are any of you familiar with where Marshville is? I know, many of you are. But we call it Marsh Vegas, and those that have not been there, you'll understand in just a minute. It's because when you ride through Spindale, it's very much like Marshville. I actually spent my summers here on West Street with my Meemaw. Love that woman to death. My mother was raised here. My aunt lives in Forest City, and my cousin sitting right here, Lisa, she lives in Bostic. My mom and dad are actually here today, and she grew up here and loved every minute of it. I grew up in a tiny town, just like this one. I get you, I am you. And now let's talk about how I went from the small town to where I am now, which is still really close by because I came back home. The power that will lead you to future victories and help you build lifelong relationships. Working hard, following your dreams and passions, and never forgetting where you came from. Be you. There's no one else like you. But first of all, I would not recommend leaving town like I did. I got married. I left home, thought I was in love, with promises to go to college. That clearly was not his plan. He wanted a stay-at-home wife. And there's nothing wrong with that if that's your goals, but they certainly were not mine. So I learned something that day, the power that I hope you'll take away with you today. Sticking true to your own dreams instead of trusting others' plans. Don't let anyone derail you. So it was on to plan B. The big D happened. And I left with nothing but a small amount of cash and a car that I did live out of the trunk of. But the next thing happened was I was able to get a job in a bank, and it was only minimum wage. But whenever I hear someone say, I have a job and it's only minimum wage, I say do it the best you can, because you never know who you might meet or where that job might take you. And this one took me into a place that I never would have thought in a million years. But because of that, I want to say, well, they're really, Jose, I guess I'm just talking to you as a student. I just want to congratulate you, especially after hearing your story of this is your second career, the second season as I call it, and that you're here, and I just want to say congratulations. Well, my bank job did lead down an unlikely path, but more importantly, I was able to get out of the trunk of my car, stand with friends on their couches. I got into an apartment, and it was a blessing in disguise. And at this new position, when I met the couple that was starting an industrial supply house, I didn't even know what it really was, but I was like, I can't keep going at minimum wage, and they see something in me that maybe I should see in my own self. So I went there and I interviewed, and I met a man that would change my life when he had a vision and allowed me to be the first female industrial salesperson. It was amazing. He taught me everything I needed to know, from cutting tools to nuts and bolts. It didn't matter. He taught me. And he also taught me the value of working your way up in a business. I started in the warehouse, then I did customer service, and then I was able to go into outside sales. I was scared. I was frightened. But I was not giving up, and I was not going back home. So I said to myself, what if I fail? Remember that what if scenario. You'll hear it again. While making sales calls for this particular smaller company, which I loved, I met a sales manager for a very large fastener corporation. And he offered me a position, and it was absolutely amazing. But for me, I liked where I was at. So I wanted to go back to those people and make let them know what was going on, and that I needed some help, financially, and that I wanted to negotiate with them and see if we couldn't do any better. And when I got there to talk to them, they fired me on the spot. There was no chance of working anything out. So, first thing I did was head toward a payphone. So I headed to the first payphone that I could find, and I called the boss of the new business, and I told him I wanted to take the job. So the power that you see you through fear is visualizing a closed door as a window of opportunity. Yes, visualizing a closed door is a window of opportunity. Your perspective is everything. The new opportunity, my own company car, an expense account, $30,000 plus commission, which is equivalent to $100,000 today. I had insurance and stock options, and at that time I didn't even know what stock options were. And that was a huge celebration. I was standing there. I didn't know whether to cry, to laugh. I just knew for that moment I was going to make it. Well, I was fired again that same day. Second time. Before I could even get started, he rescinded the offer. Can anybody guess why? I was a woman, or I am a woman. Because I'm a woman. That's right. So I refused to be a victim of discrimination. Despite the initial resistance of my new boss, I had faith in myself, and I convinced him to give me the position. The power is never giving up, knowing that the biggest threat to your success is your own willingness to settle for less than you deserve. So he did hire me, but he concocted a plan. His plan was to hide my gender. So I became C.R. Johnson of Territory Number 2. And I couldn't go to any functions because he didn't want his boss to know that he had hired me, because his plan in his mind was he could grow sales and then he could get a promotion. So at about the 18-month mark, the territory that I was in had grown to be the largest from all of their 11 branches with the highest profit margin. So I got to go to the corporate meeting, and I'll never forget the look on their face when they saw a woman stand up to get that award. Of course, the boss that I had that was insecure, to say the least, he took all the credit because of how well he trained me. The power for a fulfilled life, living life with no regrets. Do it afraid. So I was about to take a big step, and you ask me, how did I do it afraid? Well, I've learned along the way, and I shared this with Sandra, that fear mimics excitement in your body, that is. You feel the same way regardless of what is going on, but it's how you frame it in your mind. You tell yourself, I'm excited. This is a new opportunity. And because the replacement for that manager split my territory 3 times and continued to make me start over, I saw an opportunity that decided that I would do it afraid, and I would start my own business. And that became Victory Bolt Incorporated. I started it with 2 other partners that were absolutely amazing. So what I would recommend is taking action immediately when an opportunity presents itself. Even if it is to learn more, you don't have to know everything to take the first step. So as Margaret said, with $3,000 on a credit card of 21% interest, the 2 partners and I started. It was founded in Knoxville, and we went from 3 to 18 employees in less than a year. And 2 years later, we had multiplied 4 times over. And I no longer had to worry about a roof over my head because I bought my first house at the age of 24. But my personal life became a complete nightmare. I became engaged to one of my partners who was fantastic. He was wonderful. He was smart. But he became physically abusive. The stronger I got, the more he pushed back and tried to deteriorate how I was growing and how I was learning, which was a benefit to him, but he didn't see it that way. So I bet you're wondering, how can this lead to an opportunity? Because you know what? The crap was hitting the fan. It was an awful time in my life. So I decided I could curl up in fear or get up and fight. So I developed a plan. I decided to get an attorney and demand a branch in North Carolina. I had been in Tennessee for 8 years, and it was time for me to go home. So I told the attorney to go to Jerry and say, Renee wants a branch in North Carolina, or her plan is to go next door and start one herself and take every account you have. That took a lot to say, but they took me seriously, and I did get the branch. The power is having a plan that you believe in. Getting ahead means thinking ahead. The great news for me, they did go out of business, but 3 months before their demise, I was able to buy them out. I'm sorry, this gets me emotional sometimes. I was able to buy them out and became sole owner of Victory Bolt and Specialty in 1988. The best part, I had the opportunity and the pleasure to go back and take many of their accounts that I had developed in Tennessee. That was a good day. Well, it seems I can't keep myself from taking risk, and guess what? I got married again. And a few years into that marriage, I also decided to play Superwoman. A few months into my 16-year marriage, I decided to play Superwoman, and I climbed up into a 15-foot tall makeshift attic, and I fell flat on my back. At that point, my back broke in 3 places, and I spent a lot of time in the back brace and in a hospital bed. And it was at that time that I started to realize that I had moved from an abusive relationship into one that I never saw coming either, which was mental abuse. With me being trapped in a bed, nowhere to go, you experience things that you just do not realize that could ever happen to you. So, Big D number 2 happened. So, but through all this, I was involved with Turning Point and had been for a few years before that. And they truly helped me get through this once again. I was actually in a board meeting when I decided that I couldn't do it anymore, which was amazing to me. And a lady came in and actually talked about mental abuse. So the power is to believe in yourself, allowing no one to minimize your strengths. And remember, love is never supposed to hurt physically or mentally. Well, guess what next? Would it be 3 times a charm or 3 strikes you're out? Thank goodness it was 3 times a charm. But in the second year of our marriage, I started having some weird health issues. And my husband insisted that I get an MRI. And this is what we found out. The power to a life worth living that I discovered, and I want to share with you today, is being thankful for today, because in one moment, your entire life could change forever. I was sent straight for emergency surgery before I had a seizure that could cause permanent brain damage. And I want to ask, how many of you pride yourself in being independent? I did too. I wore it like a badge. You know, I am woman, I can do anything, watch me roar, you know, that was me, you know. But at that moment, I was going to find myself not to be independent, but to be in dependence. Not only did I have a 12-hour craniotomy surgery that would mean a long recovery time, the economy was crashing because it was 2008 and the Great Recession was hitting. So we went during the same time from 49 employees around the country to 8, and that included my husband and I. Well, there are various higher powers to consider in our lives, but I'm a Christian. My power at that moment, and many of my other adversities, was to lean into God and pray because I needed His strength to keep going. My prayers were answered. The tumor was not cancer, and after a few scary moments during the surgery, my mind was intact. Or, I mean, it was at least as good as it was before the brain tumor, so that was good. But it left a path of destruction. I couldn't feel my legs. I was paralyzed from the waist down. But so thankful I did not die, and there were still opportunities to turn things back around and tell my story of how God was with me every step of the way. But first, I had to live a new journey in this world of a never-ending adversity and prayerfully walk again. Well, I was back at work at 4 months in my wheelchair after the surgery, and it was somewhat of a resemblance of a normal life. Things were different, and I was more dependent than I'd ever been, and the company was a startup again. But I have to tell you at this point that I was going through a lot of rehabilitation, and the first day of therapy, I'll never forget, the therapist said, "What is your goal?" And I said, "To walk unassisted." And he's writing it down. And I said, "In heels." And he went, "But y'all look. You know, they're not the spikes I used to wear, but hey, I'll take it. I'm walking, I'll take it. I may still limp. It didn't turn out exactly like I wanted, but I am determined I will not limp through life." And that's my motto. So my power to move forward, working with what you have. It was a new day. The times when you feel the most limited is when you must deeply embrace what you currently have, despite the challenges before you. Out of appreciation comes renewed energy and determination. The weirdest thing, though, was the first year of being in a wheelchair was how I learned that people with disabilities are treated. And it was eye-opening. I was the same person before that I was in the chair. But I learned that people would no longer make eye contact with me. They would talk to Ray. They wouldn't talk to me. And, you know, I learned at that point that people need to understand how to treat people with disabilities. You know, they may be nonverbal. They may not make eye contact with you, but you never know how your kind words, what your kind words can do for them. Nearly 1 billion people around the world live with disabilities. And what you do not hear when you listen to the news is when you hear about discrimination, people with disabilities are the most discriminated people in the world. So from that point, Ray and I decided, my husband Ray, decided that we would make it our mission to teach people how to treat people with disabilities, but to allow a situation where they could live in dignity. So Ray and I have decided that all the net proceeds from my book, Soaring Through Adversities, will go to the Victory Advantage. Our concentration is on affordable housing and transportation for those in need. But our first phase 1 and 2, we have chosen to do people with disabilities. We're very early in it. In fact, we just got awarded our 501c3 last week, so we're celebrating that moment. And, we need your prayers, we need your help. Anybody that you can recommend that may have insight into people with disabilities, we appreciate the help. I've shared a lot, but now let's talk about one of the other adversities that is unspoken and unseen many times. I've heard my entire life, Renee, you were so strong. You're one of the strongest women I've ever known. But at times that was only on the outside. You've heard that phrase, fake it till you make it. I did that quite often. And for many years, I carried it around inside. That is, until I couldn't. And you remember What If Land. The power to control fear, staying out of the negative side of What If Land, because I even say it has no zip code. What if land? What if I fail the test? That's the perceived reality. That's what's going through your mind. But the reality is that you tell yourself, I studied hard. I'm going to do well on this test. And that's how you have to set your mind. But despite all the efforts that I did that and other techniques, depression would creep in. It would take over, and sometimes I would spend days in bed. It was tough. But a lot of people don't talk about this adversity because it's one of those things that is hard for people that do not suffer to understand. You can see a broken arm and say, can I help you? But you can't see when you're depressed. And that's very difficult for people to understand. So I'm standing here today accepting the part of who I am, and I focus on being stronger today than yesterday. The power that has come out of this is never soaring alone. Whether it be domestic violence, support for those with disabilities, or mental health. Find your people. Find people that are going through what you're going through. Don't suffer alone. That has helped me more than anything. There's no magic pill for this. For me, it was talk therapy. It was for being around people that understood. I talked about the people that don't. Find the people that do understand. And then I encourage you to speak out to help other people that may be against talking about what they have so that they can find the power in the adversities they're going through. I'm going to leave you with a final thought. Learn how to see adversity as a setup for something tremendous rather than a setback for disaster. Shift your mindset to strengthen your resolve and lift yourself to a higher ground, to soar like an eagle from a bird's eye view of what truly can be. Ask yourself, is this happening to me or is this happening for me? Well, I listed all the different adversities, and I think I've covered just about every one of them. So let's switch gears, and I want to talk to you about the new season of my life. And as Margaret said, I did sell the company in 2019, and it was hard for me. I've told several people that I lost my business. I didn't lose my business. I sold my business. But even my daughters say that Victory Bolt was my firstborn child. As sad as that sounds, it's true. It's true. So what we did was I decided to start a company called Victory in Time. And the part of that is to promote my book and sell my book, Soaring Through Adversities, which I don't know if you guys even know there's a small paper in Marshfield, but there is. And a gentleman that has a disability, he came and interviewed me, and it was absolutely amazing to spend time with him. He has autism, and he is dynamic. He announces at football games in Union County. He is a correspondent for the paper, and he's still going to Wingate University. So I really enjoyed spending time with him, and he called it my autobiography. And it is about my story, clearly. I put it all out here, even that I've been married 3 times. But it's about life lessons. These are in there, plus many others. And it's not just about life lessons, it's about business lessons. I have segments in there called Business in the Eagle Way, Learning in the Eagle Way. And so it's great for people that are starting new businesses, and I'm excited about, hopefully it will touch people's lives in a way that they will see that business is hard, but you can be real with it and be yourself. Build relationships. Let people know who you are. Let people know where you came from, because that's okay. You don't have to be from New York City or Dallas. It doesn't matter, because what we've learned in these small towns is grit, is fight. But we also know how to love our neighbors, and that's something that this world is missing. And that's what I want people to see when they, or read when they see this book, that they can absorb this. Then I have, I'm hoping that I will be able to go and do other speaking engagements like this one. But also, I have started a mastermind group called Victory Circles. There's actually 3 groups, and that's mastermind forums for business owners, executives, and emerging leaders. So I'm really excited about that, because you've got all gamuts. It does have biblical principles involved, because I'm hoping people understand the need for our faith in the marketplace, because there's so much hate in the world, and you know, how do we overcome that? And that is by showing love. So we are actually starting those this fall, and there are scholarships available, and if you guys would like to go on my website, you can get the details from that, and there's my contact information. Does anybody have any questions?
What was it you invented?
Oh my gosh, y'all, that's a financial thing I left out. I invented a 1-driver bit screw from a tiny 4 diameter to a 1/2 inch diameter. It only took 1 driver bit. It was amazing. People thought that it was going to take off, and it really did in the beginning. I had partners around the world. We were building a tight-knit community, no matter where we were at. I mean, it was Europe, it was South Africa, it was everywhere. And I ended up losing $2 million. Oh my gosh, did I? And one of them is about, you can build relationships that are good and that are bad. And the European partner was not on the up and up. Their culture is different. And that's part of the book. I encourage you to understand cultures when you're dealing worldwide, because his intent was to never grow the business, but to find fault and to sue. So the money that I spent, that I lost, praise God, I didn't lose everything. But I learned that everybody's different, and you have to put on some tough skin, that I learned early on. But my husband came in one night. He wasn't even my husband at that point. We were dating. We were engaged. And he came in, and I was having a meltdown it was called Uniscrew. I was having a meltdown. And he looked at me, and he's like, "What is it?" And I said, "You know what it is. It's Uniscrew, baby. I may lose everything." And he said, "Honey, I would live in a tent with you." I said, "Oh, God, no, please just let me go back to the trailer."
So you didn't go on Shark Tank, did you?
I wish I had him. Because I could have got some other support instead of these people in Europe that, that had the attitude that they did. Yeah. But it was, it was so much fun. I got to do a lot of travel. I mean, there was a lot of good. I met some wonderful people. So I try not to concentrate on that one, but it was tough. It was tough. So, but anyway.
Focus on the good, but if you could go back and change one thing, what would that one be?
Not be a workaholic. The brain tumor was a blessing. No matter the hardships that it created, the tough times it created, it changed me. I focused on different things. Family, friends, and I had fun. I think it was, by a greater plan that the company did do what it did for '08 because it was like a startup. It was more manageable. I had fun. It was almost like starting over again. And when you're on the bottom, the only thing you can do is go up if you keep trying. Just stand up and fight. That's what you need to do.